clerk please do roll call?
Members of committee, I will be calling your name. Please indicate your presence. Councillor Santos.
Present.
Councillor Vicente.
I'm here.
Councillor Willens.
Present.
Councillor Paleshi.
Present.
Councillor Bowman.
Present.
Councillor Medeiros.
Here.
Councillor Williams.
I'm here.
Councillor Fortini. Councillor Fortini. I'll come back to you. Councillor Singh.
Here.
Yep, here. Councillor Singh is here.
And Councillor Fortini, was that you?
Yes, please.
Your volume is very, very low at this point, but I did hear you. Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Mayor Brown is present. All 11 members are present, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Peter, did you want to go over the order so we can look at the, we have 2 delegations, is that it today?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So yesterday, committee added the delegation, which is shown on the screen as Delegation 1, regarding the dome facilities for field hockey. There was a subsequent delegation request that received this morning from Mark Sebamalia, a Brampton resident, and that will be subject to the committee's approval to hear the delegation today. And then, Charlotte, can you just scroll down? And all the departmental presentations have been completed. We do have the additional correspondence, Mayor Brown, that you have provided just for receipt today with item 10.1. And then the additional documentation we have are the additional information requests that have been provided from finance staff and city staff to the various requests from budget committee. After that, there's an opportunity for councillor question period, and then the final budget committee recommendations. And as in previous years, the proposal is that the clerk's office will go through all the recommendations from start to finish for a final vote, and there will be individual votes where some members have declared conflicts on various items. And then there is a public question period, and then finally adjournment. And just a reminder that budget committee is scheduled from 1 till 4 today, and if necessary, 7 till 9 this evening. There was also a discussion about adding members bringing motions forward, and perhaps that could happen after the delegations when the committee has received those delegations.
Yeah, there's a number of motions that I'm aware of, Peter, so why don't we do the motions after the deputations?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, let's start with the deputations then.
So, Mr. Chair, the first delegation regarding the dome facilities for field hockey, the 3 individuals have not joined the meeting yet. They have been provided the coordinates for today, but we do have the delegate Mark present for delegation number 2. So Mark, I'm going to unmute your microphone, and Charlotte, if you can bring up his presentation, and Mark, you can address the budget committee.
I was just going to say, I don't know if it needs to be voted on or if it's okay to go ahead.
So you can go ahead, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you, Council. Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for your time. Just need to pull up my presentation.
We'll just bring it open momentarily.
Okay. All right. So today I'd like to just address the state of local infrastructure and other budget issues. Next slide, please. So if you can see here, this was the infrastructure gap that was outlined in the 2018 budget. And I just want to highlight the increasing gaps somewhere, which has peaked in 2024-25 to 600 million. Next slide, please. And if you look at the following budget, that gap then further increased to a further 100 million. And then if you go to the next slide, that gap without the annual infrastructure levy continues to rise. And in the latest document, which you can find in the next slide, you can see it peaks almost to about 800 million. So with the current needs with the current infrastructure and the annual needs, which continue to rise every year, with how the city is operating its or generating its revenue to cover these needs, it's currently not being met. And these were met, I believe, at a 2% increase per year. If you can go to the next slide. So the construction price index gives you just an idea of how much the costs go up on a year-by-year basis. And with how the city had projected with the 2% increase, if you compare this to construction price increase, that number hasn't always stayed at 2. It's always gone up between 2. It's gone as low as 2, I should say, and it's been between 3 and 4%. So with the numbers that have been projected on the city's portion, it's always just falling behind. And based on that 2% increase and comparing it to this construction price index, you're not going to ever even come close to meeting those needs on a year-by-year basis. Next slide, please. Also, at the same time, you want to also look at these construction class estimates as to whenever projects are being ran. So whenever you are attempting to put a budget or some sort of costing estimate to when projects are being put together, you have these estimates. And in the initial kind of setup as to when projects were being set up, you had certain estimates. If we use the Ontario LRT as an example, the funding will start at 1.4 billion, and then it ended up being to 2.1 billion, with the whole route, with portions of the route being cut. One example being the loop that was supposed to go to square one, it was suddenly cut out. So not the next slide, please, but the slide after, the final slide, slide 9. Yeah. So this is a list of all projects that the city would like to complete. We're talking the Main Street LRT extension, the third storage maintenance facility, the many BRT projects, the Zoom projects, the additional hospital and libraries that would be additionally constructed in the new areas. So from my end, recommendations are to look at, well, you need to address the existing infrastructure gap that continues to grow, because every year when you have to maintain infrastructure and it continues to wear down, costs are going to go up by a lot. Now, the number I showed you for the 2019 SOLI, that was delayed. That was from a July meeting. In the current budget, couldn't find the 2021 projected SOLI, so that needs to be it just needs to be updated. I don't have that information. Also, that SOLI would need to be updated at least to account for the construction cost index, because 2%, as we can tell, is perhaps short, and maybe that number needs to be adjusted. At the same time, with the list of the projects you have, you need to look at the report. You need to get at least an idea of, perhaps, and staff can be directed to provide this to you. You just need to look at the costs of the city's portions of these projects, and most importantly, if it's going to be financed with debt, you want to know what those costs are going to be. Also, the city right now, I think, has a 3-year capital budget report, and I think that needs to be maybe moved on to a 10-year capital project. And these will be projects over 10 million, just to get a rough estimate, just to see what things are going to look like in the next 10 years. And that would be the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. We have a question from Councilor Fortini.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question. So, we're talking about construction costs. I think probably it's around the 15%. But if we have money sitting like Victoria Park Arena, why haven't we done anything in the last 3 years to get it moving? Because now it's going to, and I agree with you, it's going to cost more. So I just like to know when this is coming up to start, to tear it down. I know me and the mayor did a tour there. A lot of people have been complaining. It's been sitting there, fenced up. We're paying rental on the fence. So I'd like to know when this is coming down to start construction. So construction costs, as I agree with you, will not go up further and further, and it'll cost a lot more down the road.
Councilor Pertini, first of all, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm ready to go there and start knocking it down myself. I'm impatient as you are about this, but I don't think the deputy can answer that question. I think that would be more of a question to our staff on the planned timetable for the demolition of the arena. Is there a staff member on that could speak to that?
I can take that, Mr. Mayor. So the information that we have from staff in regards to Vic Park is that the demo will be taking place in 2021. We are going to be doing detailed design throughout 2021, and we hope to start construction at the end of 2021 with the completion date scheduled for the end of 2023.
Great, thank you. And I think me and the mayor, when we were there, some of the residents, there's a lot of history there. I think we're going to try to save some past things in the past, I guess. Hoping to try to do what we can. Thank you so much. Great.
Okay, just on that, if I could, Mr. Mayor, through to Councilor Fortini, if there's a list of items you'd like to save, or if you could get us some information on that, that would be helpful to us as we go through with the detailed design.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Pat will make sure that there is a spot on the bulldozer for you. Thank you for your enthusiasm behind this important rebuild. Next question is Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've also dabbled in a little bit of demolition in the past, so I'm happy to bring my hammer in support of doing some knockdown. And I also have very fond memories of playing hockey and lacrosse at Vic Park. So looking forward to what we're able to keep. Now, Mr. Mayor, this is the second time that we've had a delegate request a 10-year new capital project horizon. Last time I did request that David take this away, look at it. It's obviously too late for this budget cycle, but maybe that's something that we can, and I believe David can speak to it if it was only last week that I requested it, but hopefully in the new year, prior to next year's budget, we can have a discussion on what a 10-year capital project list would look like.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. Yes, I recall the ask, currently 3-year to a 10-year. Now I would say that will be a significant consultation with staff. The further out you go, in other words, the 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year, the less reliable it is. Now that stated, it would be reviewed annually anyway. And so you would see some movement up and down. I think it's good to give a line of sight that far out, especially in the context of our asset management, repair and replace. I think with the context of understanding movement within a 10-year period and reviewed annually. But it is a takeaway. I will be working with finance staff and the asset management folks to bring some more information forward on that front.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, next question is Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question about the capital projects. Would a partial amount of, would funding for these projects be coming from development charges in part?
Through the chair to Councillor Santos, yes, with each project, we would look at the available funding sources. So if there's any growth, and most of these are growth related, DCs would be eligible. So then we would be looking at the DC plan and the funding and see what's available. For these large scale strategic projects, typically we would recommend debt. DCs are typically used to grow existing services, whereas things like an LRT extension is not really an existing service. It's a strategic investment to change the service level. So when we're changing fundamentally the service level, we typically would recommend debt, and the levels of funding that we would need are typically beyond what we're collecting for DCs. So a lot of these would be a balance between debt and, if possible, development charges.
Okay, thank you. And I know that Councillor Vicente and I have been in conversation for many months now on the Williams Parkway road expansion. We decided at a council meeting not to proceed with the original expansion as projected currently, and allocated funding for, I believe it's 2022 is when that expansion would have started. The original proposal of 6 lanes had included a significant amount of development charges to pay for that particular road expansion. Is there a way, just in speaking with some colleagues, councillor colleagues, is there a way for us to earmark savings from the Williams Parkway project related to development charges, which would otherwise have been used for Williams Parkway? Can we earmark that savings because we're not proceeding it with the expansion at this time?
Through the chair to the councillor, so the funding will stay in the development charge reserve until we identify projects that are eligible for its use. So the opportunity cost or the offset of the savings for Williams Parkway will stay in the reserve. When there's a project that's identified that meets the criteria of the DC eligible bylaw, we can use those funds.
Is there a way for us to preemptively say, okay, this is how much money is going back to the DC reserve because we are not proceeding with Williams Parkway? And for example, we would like to allocate that particular DC savings or DC savings from the Williams Parkway expansion over to the hospital, for example?
Through the chair, my understanding is you cannot. According to the legislation, the development charges for each particular pot need to be used for that service. The development community, the agreement with the development community is that they are giving us those funds to use it for specific purposes that they've agreed to. So we don't have the ability to just pick and choose and divert it. Now, my understanding is that's the existing legislation, but yeah.
Okay, is there any way for us to get a little bit more detail on whether or not that might be possible? I'm just thinking about, you know, some of the priorities that we have, like the Queen Street BRT and the hospital. If we've made a decision not to allocate DCs for the expansion of a road, could we, if there is a way for us to earmark that savings in development charges over to a hospital or to Queen Street BRT, just as examples?
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, just was speaking to our manager of development charges. So it cannot be diverted. It must be used for roads.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Santos, and that covers the questions. Thank you to the deputant for the presentation. To the clerk, do we have the second deputation online yet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we have not. I've reached out to the delegates. They said they were connecting, but they're not connected at this point in time. So I would just draw committee's attention to, on the revised agenda item under item 6.1, possible delegations. There is attachment number 12, which is the emails that have been submitted from the delegates regarding the field hockey dome facility and the request to do something over at Cassie Campbell Community Center. And I'm still waiting for them to join, but my advice would be is perhaps committee can just move on. And if they do join, then I will advise committee, and committee can determine if they wish to hear from them at that point in time.
Okay. On that note,
Mayor, if I can.
Yes.
I don't think that what the delegates are going to say that we haven't heard before. I think many councillors have, know the Cassie Campbell Wetfield facility very well. We've had many discussions about a dome to be able to house more international events. So I think maybe if it's okay, because if they don't end up chiming in, I'd like to at least ask staff some questions that relate to it. I can hold my questions just in case they do chime in, or if they don't, maybe I can ask them during council question period. Up to you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, go ahead now.
Okay, so just to Derek, we've had the discussion for many years about a possible dome at Cassie Campbell, looking at other opportunities in the city in close proximity to the incredible wet field that we have at Cassie Campbell, and even looking as far as to the Credit View Park. In my recollection, we've I don't know if we've allocated monies in previous budgets for design or into looking into this, or we've just had the discussion. Can you give us a quick briefing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gillespie, thanks for the opportunity to answer the question. So the quick answer is yes. In the 2021 budget, there is money allocated in new capital development of $500,000. Also in 2022, so that would probably comprise of investigation and design. And then in the proposed 2023 budget, in the binders that you have for budget, there's also a $9 million placeholder there for a domed field hockey facility. So yes, to your question, we are staff have to investigate a location. I did read the delegates' email, and they are asking for something near Cassie Campbell, so it may not be at Cassie Campbell in particular. We've had discussions previously with Field Hockey Ontario, Field Hockey Canada, and in order to facilitate international or national level tournaments, we actually don't have to be at the exact same location, which makes it a little bit easier for us to start looking at other alternative options. So the money is in the budget. Staff will begin to look at sites and explore that through 2021 and 2022. And as I said, the placeholders are in the budget for the next 3 years for this facility.
Okay, and I think one of the complaints that we get from the field hockey, not only the players but the fans as well, is that long walk across the parking lot to Cassie Campbell to use a washroom, where there's no outdoor change rooms or washrooms for the players, the coaches, or the refs. So I think this was the opportunity to look at. I know that the cricket pitch on the north side of Cassie Campbell, we had some discussions a long time ago that could possibly be domed and house an indoor facility with locker rooms and bathrooms. But I think with the elimination of some of the cricket pitches, or moving some of the cricket pitches that were currently either in the west, Brampton West, or Brampton North, I believe, into other areas like Bram South East, it made it a little bit more difficult for avid cricket players to find locations that are suited to play the game. So as long as we're kind of looking at all aspects to see if maybe that cricket pitch is more, if that's more conducive to have that at Credit View and dome the Cassie Campbell field, or vice versa, something like that. So just I'm glad that we're going to be looking at that, and hopefully the delegation gets on soon enough, can talk a little bit more about some of the amazing international players that have been coming to Brampton to play this unbelievable game. And if anybody has, I know a lot of councillors have been out to watch some of these games go, especially on the Cassie Campbell wet field. It is an unbelievable game to watch, and so enjoyable. So hopefully 2021 brings around some more tournaments once we get through the pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm just looking at questions. Councillor Williams, you have a question on this
yes.
delegation as well?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Through you, Mayor Brown, to Derek, I guess you can answer this. It would be really great to see a dome for this sport. It would be it'd be awesome to see this. Just wondering about the size and the size of the field, and does the pitch have the space needed to be able to play a full game or even have smaller half-size games? I know that was one of the concerns that was addressed, discussed before. So I'm wondering if you can just speak to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Williams, thanks for the question. So the facility that we were speaking about previously with Councillor Paleshi would be a brand new facility. And so we would make sure that, and that's why we have to do some due diligence in terms of making sure we've got the clearances to, we would do a full-size field if we, in order to host international, national field hockey events. I would also point out to council that we've done a lot with the field hockey community in terms of discussions. And so one of the things we're doing is, I know Victoria Park Arena was previously mentioned. That indoor facility will also be able to house field hockey. Now that's floor field hockey, which is different than the field hockey game. But we, in the next couple of years as a city, will be heavily increasing the opportunities for people to play field hockey throughout the city. And so this new facility will definitely allow for international play, and then the ability to do training and whatnot. And we also, as a ancillary point, we do have this Brampton Soccer Dome, which we are currently working on getting up and running, and hopefully we hope that that will provide some opportunities for training as well. The field is not the same, so it won't be a true play, but as a bridge till we get some of these other facilities, we hope that we are able to accommodate something in there. We're still doing investigation with terms of the ball and the dome, but we do have a lot of facilities coming forward. So that, hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you, Derek, because I know we were looking at I'm hearing a big echo. Oh, thank you. Because I know it was a conversation around whether or not there was the space to be able to have smaller games as well as the larger games, you know, especially if you're going to do practices for people who want to try out the sport. So it's really good to see that we're moving in this direction. Field hockey is a great sport. I played it in high school. And, you know, I think it's great to see that there's so many people who want to bring the sport back and also grow it. So I am looking forward to the new domes. And Victoria Park, seeing that it might be another space for field hockey indoors, it really does address the issues, because before they were talking about nets and how to protect even the glass at the soccer center if we wanted to bring it indoors. So having this, the dome, and down the line with Vic Park, I think it's really going to answer some of the concerns, or speak to some of the concerns that our field hockey players were having. So this is exciting news, and I'm looking forward to, as well with Councillor Paleshi, to watch some games and maybe even get out on the field and play some field hockey. So thank you.
Thank you. I see here, Delegate Margit here is not in the session. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I mistyped. That should be is now in session. My apologies.
Okay, so now we can have the delegate, and note that we've asked the delegate, we've raised 2 questions on behalf of the delegate even before they have spoken. So, Manjot here, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not being here at 1 p.m. My assistant had actually diarized this meeting for next Tuesday, so I just want to apologize about that. As you guys are aware, I am here to speak to you guys about the sport of field hockey. I did briefly chime in on those discussions that you guys were having. Now, as you guys are aware, I heard from your discussions earlier, there are 2 types of field hockey that are played in and around the GTA. One being outdoor field hockey, which is the more traditional type of play that is played with 11 players on the field that's commensurate to the size of a soccer field. And while there's also an indoor version, which is typically played on hardwood with 5 players, it's the outdoor field hockey that draws the attention on the international level. Now, a little bit about myself. I've represented the province of Ontario at the provincial level between 2005 and 2008. I captained the 2007 squad, which went on to win the gold in British Columbia. I'm also a 3-time Ontario Summer Games gold medalist. While now I'm a practicing lawyer here in the GTA. I'm still involved with the sport. My father still runs one of the field hockey clubs in Brampton. Now, although Ontario has gone on to develop some of the best field hockey players that have ever worn a Canadian jersey, the unfortunate part about it is that we've never made up more than 10% of the national team. And by 10%, I mean just the most players that we've had from Ontario represent the country is 3 on a squad of 15 players. And the reason for that is because here in Ontario, we have a number of hurdles that we need to pass in order to be able to make it to the national level. And our greatest challenge in being able to do that has been the facilities available to us. Now, when you consider the weather out on the West Coast, it allows for players out in British Columbia to play outdoor field hockey all year round. But that's not the case for us here in Ontario, where we only play outdoor field hockey from April till about September, October, and then we're forced to opt to play indoor field hockey just because we don't have the facilities in place to continue practicing during the winter seasons. And when you have to go from playing a sport that involves 5 people on hardwood to then reverting back to playing a sport of 11 people on a soccer field, it poses real challenges in terms of becoming better at your sport and at your craft. And that really places us at a significant disadvantage when compared to those players out in BC that get to practice all year round. And they get that exposure to the coaches. And the entire Field Hockey Canada regimen takes place out on the West Coast, just given the circumstances surrounding the weather in Toronto. And those players that have been standouts have essentially had to sacrifice everything and pack their bags and move out to Vancouver and to live in a university dorm room while they're practicing to be on the national team. And when you consider all these challenges and the amount of talent that we have here in the GTA, I think it warrants us to have a sports dome here in Brampton, because with the growing population, growing popularity of the sport here and the amazing talent pool that we have, I think we're just overlooking all the talent that could go on to represent the Canadian team.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? Councillor Peleschi again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Manja, for getting in. Sorry about the confusion. We were trying to get you on there last night, but it's always great to hear, you know, the people going through the ranks of field hockey, and then you know, being ambassadors to the sport, and the love of what you have for the sport of field hockey really comes out in the delegation, and we get it. We understand that it's very difficult. I know every time I've been to one of the tournaments, I'm always hearing about players having to pack up and move out to BC to continue to play, and we want to ensure that all of our young people right here in Brampton are set up extremely well in terms of what they can achieve and whatever the city can do to help. So look forward to the discussion that we're going to be having about this in the near future. There's already some monies that are being allocated to the budget this term, to this budget cycle, to try and see where we can house such another great facility like the wet field that we have at Cassie Campbell, to ensure that our kids do have the future in the sport. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I see no other questions. Thank you to the delegate for the presentation. Peter, now we can move to the next section, which would be motions, but do we need a motion to receive the delegates?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Peleschi, seconded by Councillor Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I believe Councillor Willens has the first motion. Do we want to put that on the screen?
we'll bring it up momentarily. Charlotte, if you can go to the first motion from Councillor Willens on, I believe it's community gardens or backyard gardens. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you through the mayor. I don't need to read through it. I think it's pretty much speaks to what I talked about in the deliberations earlier in last week. I do note, I think I got a note from Councillor Bowman and Councillor Williams. I think Councillor Williams said she wanted to second this, but if all of council want to second it, I'm okay with that too. Does anybody have any questions about the motion? It's pretty straightforward.
I don't see any questions. Oh, Councillor Williams.
Hi, yes, thank you, Mayor Brown. Yeah, I was hoping to second this, and we're working with the horticulture societies on the garden recognition program. So having, a portion of the budget just to go for the recognition piece of this program would be really great. They're really looking forward to launching fully next year in person. This year we did a online version where people got to submit their pictures, and it was very well received and positive. And so, having the garden recognition program added to it just to show off people's gardens, it really encourages people to take ownership of their city and beautify their spaces and care for their spaces. So I'm really looking forward to this coming through next year. And, and so, yeah, that's the reason why I would like to second this motion, or second along with Councillor Bowman as well. Thank you.
Okay. And of course, the backyard garden program is a win for food security, a win for the environment, consistent with our climate change goals. I'm glad to see that it continues to grow in our city. Are there any objections to this motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Councillor Willens, I believe, has a second motion. We could put that on the screen.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This again doesn't need any explanations. This is more of what we've been talking about over the last this term of council, getting the community energy and emissions plan reduction done and set up. So it's basically just asking to increase the budget from 200,000 to 500,000 over the next 3 consecutive years in our budget. And just as an added note, I saw some interesting news in the media today that the plans for a greener Mississauga is taking a back seat in their proposed 2021 budget. Doesn't look like they're going to see any significant amount of money until 2023. So to the David Suzuki Foundation that came out to lobby us to get to the 30% by 2030, thank you very much. We are much better than Mississauga. So I'll leave it for you now if there's any questions. And if not, we can hopefully we'll have the support of all council on this.
Recorded vote, please.
And just to say thank you, Councillor Willens, for putting this forward. I think it speaks to the concern we heard from the David Suzuki Foundation, and we do want to be consistent with our climate change goals. And so in an era where we're being extra careful with taxpayer dollars, I think it's significant when other cities are cutting back on environmental initiatives. We're not doing that in Brampton, and I think that's something we can be proud of. So there's been a request for a recorded vote. So will the clerk conduct the recorded vote?
Members of committee, the motion is on the screen. All in favor, please indicate. Councillor Santos.
Yes.
Councillor Vasante.
Go green, yes.
Councillor Willens.
Yes.
Councillor Paleshi.
Yes.
Councillor Bowman.
Yes.
Councillor Medeiros.
Yes.
Councillor Williams.
Yes.
Councillor Fortini.
Yes.
Councillor Singh.
Yes.
Councillor Dillon.
Yep.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously, 11-0.
Okay, this takes us to the next motion, which I believe is Councillor Paleshi's, which was emailed out to council yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just given the, and I think Councillor Medeiros is seconding the motion, Mr. Clerk. You know, given the year that we've been through and the success that we had with the with the community enhancement program last year. This is a good way for I think us to give back to our wards, to try and shine a light and have some positivity around our the health, our body, our mind, and the support of this is much appreciated. And looking forward to giving back. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, a question for clarification, Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. And I've had some preliminary conversations with Councillor Pleshy on this. I do support this motion. I am just wondering if staff can clarify for us. I don't know if you know the answer right now. What is the forecast? Is there a potential forecast? Or, for example, are we going to be, in the next few years, still contributing to the cash in lieu reserve despite us withdrawing money this particular year?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor, thanks for the question. I do anticipate possibly Acting Treasurer Mark Medeiros is on to answer in detail, but I do believe that the cash in lieu comes through respective developments throughout the year, so it may change year over year, and perhaps Mark can add a little bit to that.
Through the chair, yes, I would just assume that as long as we have development, that the cash in lieu will continue to grow. Don't have a forecast handy at this point, though.
That's okay. I'm like, we are one of the fastest growing municipalities in the country. So with all of the infill development and applications from the planning department that are coming in, I think we can be confident that the cash in lieu reserve will continue to grow despite us using this money this time around to benefit the residents across the city in every single ward. I do support the motion. I just want clarification from the mover if this is something that is a one-time only or something that you're thinking of every single year.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Santos. Before I answer that question, I just also to note, Mississauga continues to increase their cash in lieu by redevelopment. So there's always going to be opportunities for the reserve for cash in lieu of parkland. So and then just to your question, I think this is something that we heard a lot from our residents out in the community this year. At least I did more than ever before, because they were out. We had a lot more people cycling the Etobicoke Creek Trail. I had a lot more people using when they could the outdoor equipment. So just a lot of comments that I heard back from residents in terms of certain areas and what they could do and what they could use in these certain areas to keep their healthy, basically the healthy community living through something like this. So thank you. I think I answered your question.
You did, thanks, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Willens, and then Dylan, then Medeiros.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Pleshy and Councillor Medeiros for bringing this forward. This is great. This is something that we've been trying to get through for the healthy community initiatives that Councillor Bowen and I sat on. This is exactly what we want to do in the city of Brampton. So good work. Just for clarification, though, this doesn't include any shade shelters or structures. This is for activity, keeping people active in the park.
Yeah, so this has to do with anything that you're allowed to use for cash in lieu, and that's why I asked the question. And thank you to Derek and Mr. Martin for Mr. Medeiros for sending the information on what you're allowed to spend cash in lieu on.
Okay, perfect. Because I don't want it to become passive. I want them to have lots of activity out there. So excellent, good. Fully supported the motion. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you. So I just wanted some clarification. We've had the Parks Enhancement Fund. I think I know Councillor Singh and I, we utilized the funds that we had a couple years back. I think we approved about $250,000 more for each pair of wards. So those are going to go towards things like shade shelters or benches or anything that's needed in the park itself. How does this, just trying to wrap my finger around it, how does it differentiate from that?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Dillon. I think through you, Mr. Mayor, you know, what this gives each ward the opportunity to look at certain areas in your ward that don't have that kind of active lifestyle that you feel or that you've heard from the residents. So if you feel like outdoor equipment or something innovative, something different in terms of your community to promote active living, something for kids, something for our young adults, middle-aged, or even seniors. So really calling on everybody to think outside the box. Let's have that communication with not only each member of council and staff and our communities to see what we can do differently to have in the areas of Brampton.
So is this a one-time allocation of the funds? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Okay.
So if we still have 250, so that means that there's be 1.25 for wards 9 and 10, and I can speak for my wards, and I think Councillor Singh could as well. We have a lot of requests for different types of structures, and whether it's paths that go around the park where people can walk. There's a number of different things, and so there's no way I couldn't support this, just because it's going directly to all the requests that you hear from around the city. And so to me, it's a no-brainer to support. So I want to just thank you, Councilor Plushie and Medeiros, for bringing this forward. Previously we had a lot of people saying, "Hey, we don't get the things we really need," and I think this will really go towards those things. And as councilors, we're at the parks, we're at the trails, and we're meeting those people and hearing what they wanted. So I think it's a great motion. Thank you guys for bringing this forward.
Okay. Next question is Councilor Medeiros.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. First of all, thank you, Councillor Plushie, for bringing this forward and for engaging with me on this idea. And I think that Councillor Dillon rightfully touched on something. When we sort of looked at the enhancement program, and I almost view this as the enhancement sort of program on steroids, where essentially we're giving bigger chunk. And what this is responsiveness. It's also, I think it has to be said that we're being responsive, us as councillors working together with staff to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our community. Councillor Bowman, myself, we sound like a broken record, how we need needs met, and especially in wards 4. I think this would be sort of an area where strategically we can work with staff to ensure that it aligns with our master plan, to ensure that it sort of checks the dots, but it gives us that sort of flexibility and responsiveness. And if you've been following, not to bore everyone to death, but there seems to be a trend in a lot of sort of municipalities and federal governments, or not federal governments, but governments across the world, where they're looking towards, they're taking chunks of money and giving it to the citizenry body or the people, and they're allowing different communities to sort of a $250,000 allocation, and they set the priorities, and then governments will sort of enroll that. And so I think this is sort of that step towards us really trying to be responsive to our residents and trying to sort of implement this sooner than later. But I think it has to be said that with all the controls that are going to be there, so this is not any form of uncontrolled slush fund where we decide who our favorite folks are and we send it that way. This will be aligned with the master plan. So I think there's going to be criteria there where we all sort of, but it just allows us to make decisions faster and show the residents that we're being responsive to their needs. So I thank you very much, Councillor Palashi, for thinking out of the box and entrusting us with this opportunity to be responsive to our residents. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Palashi and Martin Maderos. Yeah, this is a no-brainer. I just want one question for clarification. We had, I think, so much money for 2 wards. Is this part of it, or is it an extension to this? Or is that remove that $1 million that we put aside for shade shelters and all? That's still on for this year? Staff, anyone? Hello?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the mayor, I'm not sure if that's something that Mark Medeiros can assist in confirming.
So we did not. So that we moved the enhancement of the parks. That $1 million is no longer in the budget.
I'm just trying to get an answer for you, Councillor.
Okay.
Sorry, my apologies. Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, we used to have. I think we put $1 million. Every 2 wards were supposed to be allowed to spend $250,000 to improve their parks. Is that still on for this budget?
My understanding was that that was non-recurring funding where we were using surplus from the operating budget for a couple of years to set up, kind of one-off projects, but we didn't have like an annual program. Right. But maybe I can ask Derek Boyce to confirm.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the park enhancement money, which I believe Councillor Fortini is referring to, I believe as Treasurer Medeiros alluded to, was approved, was money from surpluses, so it wasn't recurring money, so it's not in the 2021 budget to my knowledge. So I don't think Councillor Palashi's motion is a replacement. I think this is something new and innovative that him and Councillor Medeiros are putting forth, but that $250,000 for park enhancement is not in the 21 budget because I believe it was taken from surplus in previous years.
Okay, yeah, thank you. No, and I'm not saying that's going to, Councillor Palashi and Medeiros are replacing it. No, I'm supporting that. I thought there was, to join the extra money. So I think we have to talk about that and put it on because I know in wards 7 and 8 and mostly 7 and all around 3 and 4 and 1 and 5, there's a lot of trails that you actually go from one area to another. They're all falling apart. I did have this conversation with our past commissioner or director, Rob Gasper, because a lot of the times we can't even clean the snow. Kids are going to school. So we have to see maybe how we could continue that instead of maybe working into the parks, put some of that money into certain trails or those catwalks that you can go from one area to a main road so kids could get to school and people can walk through. Okay, thank you. I'll support that motion, Councilor Palashi and Medeiros. Thank you.
Okay. So I don't see any other speakers. The motion is on the floor. Moved by Councillor Palashi, second by Medeiros. Councillor Medeiros, is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay. Peter, can we put my motion on the floor next? It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Vicente, and I'm happy to speak to it. During the course of these budget deliberations, we have heard concern that we are in a very challenging year where residents are being hit hard because of COVID. People have lost their jobs. People are struggling to put food on the table, and any additional cost is challenging. The motion that I have proposed with Councillor Vicente will help us get to zero of the municipal portion of the bill, recognizing the difficulty this year the residents are are facing. End of the day, that the cost we put on residents, we have to think about that single parent living on a fixed income, that senior citizen struggling to live on a fixed budget. It's our residents, and I think this year we need to more than ever look at the cost and the pressure that we put on them. The motion is outlined would allow us to make the largest contribution to reserves in city history. The largest contribution to reserves in city history. It only adjusts it slightly so that we actually meet the 0% that we are so close to right now. We're so close to, and this slight adjustment to reserves would still keep us consistent with the largest reserve contribution in city history. And frankly, if you looked at our reserve numbers compared to other cities, it still has us as a golden as a golden standard. And so I would appreciate council's support of this, and will help us have a budget that I believe we can be very very proud of, and I'm happy to answer questions about it. I believe the first question is from Councilor Medeiros.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and I do appreciate everything you've said, and I thank you and Councilor Vicente for putting this together. And something unrelated, and certainly I will support this this year, and if there's never been a reason to support it, it would be sort of this year. But I guess my only concern then would go to maybe Mark Medeiros. All the projects which are sort of big ticket items, and I've seen in the media sort of critiques that the city of Brampton, for things like Riverwalk and things like LRT, for all these amazing all these projects that we're really sort of pushing, that we don't have any money sort of earmarked for these projects. Can you just again, because I've had residents reach out to me, I've had residents to show, can you again just for public record, let us know in terms of our council big ticket items, what is Brampton's contribution?
Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for the question. I would say that we have a significant amount of strategic reserves available to us. We have not identified exactly what we're going to use them for, but they are available to us. We have extremely low debt issuance, so we have a huge amount of debt capacity, which would also be utilized for these strategic projects. So I think the long story short is the funding availability is there. The specific fund we are going to use, whether it be our strategic reserves or our debt capacity, has not been identified, but we typically identify those when a project is at the point where it's ready to be asked of council to be approved, and that's usually when we make the final decision. So I would say these large strategic projects, we do have a significant funding capacity, and we would use that when they're ready to go.
And I thank you very much, Mark, I think that we have to be cognizant too. So I appreciate that you talked about our reserves are strategically ready. And, my whole concern, and again, I'm supporting this, but I think the conversation that this council has to have in terms of our priorities is, this year is a special year. But if we really want to start, being skin in the game, because if you look at all these projects, right now, we haven't identified, we talk about, in broad terms, but we haven't prioritized exactly where we're going to be putting our money at. And I think a lot of the sort of, major projects which we're sort of relying on, or we're sort of messaging to the province or to the federal government, hoping, money is going to come in, and money might come in. But we haven't sort of earmarked for specific projects where our money is going. So it sits there in a sort of a reserve, and we haven't really shown seriousness as much as we talk about everything we do. We haven't put a down payment on sort of the future. We haven't put a down payment on our priorities going forward. So I guess those are sort of other conversations we'll have for other times. But I just want us to be mindful of how we really have to look at this reserves and really going forward, really make some, really strategic decisions. But I thank you, Mayor, again for bringing this forward. Thank you, Councilor Vicente, for seconding it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Medeiros. And that's a good suggestion that we have this $800 million in unspent and uncommitted capital dollars. Maybe just to have a broader picture, we could have that outlined in terms of the projects that we're anticipating. I think that might be good from a financial planning perspective as well. So thank you for that thoughtful suggestions, Councilor Medeiros. Councilor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Medeiros, for bringing up those very important points. It would be nice to know and to earmark, if we could, some of those reserve funds for the priority projects that we have identified. I have been very open with not blindly supporting a 0% tax increase this year, given the challenges that we have as municipalities in terms of the limited funding that we can access to pay for everything. It's my understanding that we are definitely having issues with our operating costs in particular as we continue to build more infrastructure. Our operating costs are more and more so challenged. So I am concerned about what that means for next year in terms of what a property tax increase would look like and in years to come. But certainly staff have worked very hard to find a path forward to get to 0% this year. And so I would support that for this year if there is a path forward as identified in this motion that does not have an impact on the service levels right now. So I just want to be clear before we vote on this motion. Will there be any service impacts based on our path forward to 0% for 2021?
Mark, are you able to respond to that question? Mark Medeiros?
Through the chair to the Councilor Santos, no, there are no service reductions in this proposed budget.
Thank you very much. And so I will be supporting this motion. And again, I share very publicly my concerns about what that may mean for the following budget and in years to come as we are further challenged with operating costs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Santos. To the clerk, there's a request for a recorded vote and no more speakers. So can you run the vote?
Members of committee, a recorded vote's been requested. The motion is on the screen. All in favor, please indicate. Councilor Santos.
Yes.
Councilor Vicente.
Yes.
Councilor Willens.
Yes.
Councilor Paleshi.
Yes.
Councilor Bowman.
Yes.
Councilor Medeiros.
Yes.
Councilor Williams.
Yes.
Councilor Fortini.
Yes.
Councilor Singh.
There's a comment from Councilor Singh that his audio is off, but he supports the motion. If you could see that in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Dillon.
Yes, with the same reservations outlined by Councilor Santos. Thank you.
And Mayor Brown?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously, 11-0.
Okay, the next motion, I believe, Councilor Fortini has, I'm not sure if he's emailed it to you. I don't have a copy of it, but he has expressed in the chat box that he has a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to wait until the end to see if we hit a 0% increase. But I was going to put a motion on the floor, which I'm still going to freeze all non-union pays, including councillors and management for the 2021. I think it adds up to $2.6 million. So we could put $1.2 million towards our budget, and the other 2.4 we could give it towards to Enhancement parks or these catwalks.
Okay, Councillor.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
This is Samir, the city solicitor. May I suggest that the motion with respect to non-union salaries be more appropriate for a closed session?
Well, I have no issue, but I remember we did it last term out in the open. We froze it for 4 years. So it's non-union. I don't see why we have to go in closed unless, you know, it's a regular motion. Part of that money that we all get with staff and councillors, 1 year is not going to hurt us. It's 2.6 million, and we could put it towards our residents for the parks, and the rest we could put it towards our budget. So I think it should be out in the open, should not go in closed. And I'd like a recorded vote on that, please.
Through the chair, the motion itself would be voted on in open, but it might be more appropriate for discussions on this matter to be held in closed.
Well, it's not that I don't want to take your advice, but last term we did it out in the open. We froze it for 4 years.
So what I'm going to suggest,
well, I don't see why we have to go in closed now.
Councillor Fortini, if there is, if council votes to deal with it in the open, we can deal with it in the open. We've done that before, and so I'm going to ask the clerk to call a vote of whether we want to deal with this in camera or in public.
I got no issue. I just wondering why we had to do it, and we did it last term, I remember, and out in the open, we froze the wages for 4 years, and now we have to go in camera. But you know, so, I'll take the legal advice, and if we want to go in close, that's fine.
So, Councillor Fortini, is it your request to deal with this in public?
No, well, the lawyer, our legal saying we have to go in close. I just don't see the difference when we did it last term. But I'm going to take his advice. If we have to go in close, we'll go in close.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, then the motion is session to consider under section 239(2)(d) of the Municipal Act in regards to labor relations or employee negotiations to receive information regarding this matter.
Okay, and how long would you require for us to go in camera, Peter?
Mr. Mayor, I will require a solid 15 minutes. I'm going to have to send members of council an email with the closed session link. So 15 minutes would be appreciated.
So, okay. Mr. Mayor, before we go in close, can we just ask staff to report back before our budget? And will it make it easier? Because we're not approving the budget now.
So Mr. Mayor, that could be a proper motion, and if any report back could include hypothetically closed session information, that would require a closed session agenda for the December 9th meeting, and it would be up to council at that special meeting should they wish to go into closed session or just receive the information as part of the deliberations.
That's reasonable. So the motion is simply to ask for the cost back, and then we can decide whether to accept that report.
Well, not the cost. Well, you know, the whatever it is, a 2.6 divided, and we'll take the advice, and they'll come back to us. And if we have to go in camera, we will then. And save a lot of time now. We're not proving that today.
And Councillor Fortini, maybe department by department, so you know where it's coming from.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see some speakers who want to speak to this. Councillor Gillespie is first, I believe.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything to say that that can't be said in public. I think I understand what Councillor Fortini is trying to do, and I think it shows some fiscal responsibility. You know, when we're talking about a zero budget increase for a number of years, and we're talking about you know, what we can do to help the residents in terms of continuing to get through this this really terrible thing that's happened to the world. But I also think on the other side of it, and I'll be asking for the motion to be split if you're requesting that all non-union staff wage freeze, and then all of the councillors wage freeze. I'll be requesting that be split into two motions, and I'm happy to have the discussion on councillors. Except I would look to my fellow colleagues, the city councillors, for the comments that that they have on that separate motion. But just with respect to non-union, you know, we've put our staff and we, meaning, you know, we had to do what we had to do during this pandemic. We've asked them to make up certain areas and work a little bit more than and a little bit harder than usual. And I think that our staff at the City of Brampton have done a tremendous job in showing all of our residents what we can actually do when something like this hits not only the municipality, the nation, and the globe. I don't think that this is a time that we can turn around and thank them by not increasing salaries. I think that at this time we should be showing all of our staff the appreciation that we have for them in terms of what they've done, taking them away from their family, taking them away from you know, their vacation time. I know a lot of staff have not had vacation, and that's why at the City of Brampton we've had to increase and increase the rollover from this year to next year. So I understand Councillor Fortini, and thank you for the initiative, but I can't support that portion of the motion going forward at this time. But I'm happy to have the conversation in listening to some of the city councillors that aren't at the region for that motion once it's split. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and the next question is Councillor Santos.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, another question, again, for clarification from staff. The previous motion that we passed unanimously, through that motion, would we achieve a 0% tax rate?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, so question back to staff then is, a motion like this, would that create a further tax freeze for us, or are we already at 0%?
So through the mayor to the councillor, David here, yeah, the previous motion that was passed, or recommendation that was passed, has achieved the 0% tax levy that I think council was entertaining, and certainly directed staff to come up with that option. I would add the request for information on the non-union management salary freeze has been provided already, and I just want to get a little bit of clarity perhaps in terms of what new information is being requested that hasn't already been given. And I think maybe either finance or HR can recirculate that as we're talking. But at this point, I don't think anything new will be coming from us that hasn't already been given, unless that's open to a conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this year of 2020 has been, as we all keep saying, an unprecedented year. Everyone from unionized staff to non-unionized staff have really stepped up to the plate. And in fact, many of us throughout the entire year have been applauding all of our staff, unionized, non-unionized, for their tremendous hard work. And I echo the same sentiment that Councillor Paleshi has shared in terms of our non-unionized staff sacrificing time with their families, risking their lives to come into work, some of them, in order for all of us to take on the pandemic and to get this under control. And I'm a strong believer in boosting morale, especially during challenging times like this. And we've showed up to different departments at different points throughout the year with cupcakes, with cookies, with lunches and dinners to thank our staff for the hard work that they have been doing. And now I find it absolutely insulting almost that we are going to be suggesting that we freeze their salaries during a time when they've been working their hardest. I do not support this motion. I can't even imagine what the morale would be like if we were to do anything like this. And in fact, if the morale goes down, that will have an impact on services. That will have an impact on performance. That will have an impact on the rest of the staff throughout the city if non-union management salaries are frozen and they don't get overtime for all the work that they have been doing. I do not support this motion. I've made it clear before that I wasn't going to support this motion. And I will stand and make sure that staff feel like they are rewarded for the work that they do. I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the list of speakers. Councilor Medeiros, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And so I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate Councilor Santos, what was just said in terms of staff morale. I would just, remind all my colleagues that, we also represent the city. We represent residents, and resident morale isn't high. And resident morale, and we heard delegations to that effect, isn't impressed that there's pay increases where economically small businesses are suffering. So I don't need to paint the story where we just heard. I can just, replay the audio that the mayor just played, why we approved the zero. And I think there has to be some recognition here. Yes, staff have done a fabulous job. Staff have stepped up. And I think Councilor Fortini wanted to articulate, when we look at non-union management, and I'm not going to get into what we pay in comparison to other municipalities, and, they've showed great leadership, great work, but proving zeros, there's no pain in what we've done here. So we're approving a zero, we're increasing staff benefit, we're increasing staff increases. Something has to hit here. There has to be a logical understanding of what we're doing by giving a zero. You can't give with one hand, give the zero, and then expect on the other hand to say no. There's no pain by giving the zero. And I think what Councillor Fortini's intent here, when we're looking at management and we're looking at freezing our own salaries, yes, one, it's a symbolic gesture to show, when you use the phrase we're in this together, it doesn't apply. When I use it, we're in this together, it applies to the residents I represent in Wards 3 and 4. It represents everyone across the city, including staff, but includes everybody. So when we're in this together, certainly we're looking for ways to show support to the community. What I would ask, well, the CEO had mentioned that, what information is further requested. I think Councillor Fortini threw some examples of where that money can go to. But if I'm not mistaken, I'll go to Mark. So Mark, this possible savings that you requested, that's like half a point, that's like a 0.5% sort of savings that would be when it comes to putting something like this forward. Does that translate into that, Mark?
Through the chair to Councilor Medeiros, that's correct. 2.5. It's 2.5 million, and it's that would be approximately 0.5% on our portion of the tax bill.
Okay. Now, in terms of us to get to zero, what is the current inflation rate right now? What is the current inflation rate if we were to add inflation on our budget?
I believe, as through the chair, I believe as per last month, the inflation rate was 1.4%, and however, the Bank of Canada's target core inflation rate is still at 2%.
So, okay, Mark, can you just verify, when we give a zero, it's not just simply a zero, that if you take the rate of inflation, we're actually giving a zero plus the rate of inflation, which is that 2%.
Through the chair, that is correct. A 0% budget is effectively a reduction. We're doing more with less.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I think when, emotional pleas aside, I think if we want to be prudent fiscal managers and prudent board of directors, you can't continue over subsequent years, year after year after year, apply a zero and expect that no one's going to feel this zero, and expect that we all sit here applauding everything that goes on, being positive, and not respect and not reflect on what taxpayers are going through, what our residents are going through, and not also look at the fact that the buck has to stop here somewhere. We have to sort of say, yes, so we're saying a zero, we're not having any service cuts, we're not depleting the reserves. All this is, do you not think that the rubber's going to hit the stamp somewhere? Do you not think that there's going to be residents who are going to sit there going, well, that's amazing fiscal, that's amazing sort of numbers game here, and we're not feeling it anywhere? So I think what Councillor Fortini's intention here, and which I'm happy to second, and I would like staff to report back on where we could apply that 2.5 million savings. Where are some ideas? And I wouldn't say maybe park enhancements, we just pass something, but where can we put that to critical areas which we identified on those priority projects? Is it going to be for land for the hospital? Is it going to be for the university? That 2.5 million would go a long way in sort of earmarking and showing our cards to be a provincial or federal government where we want to apply that. And also tells our residents, and I'm not sure about you, but I think residents have been loud and clear in terms of what they want. It's not just creating a zero and saying we've done our job, and then after we keep doing increases after increases. Something's going to have to give. And I think right now this is sort of the prudent approach for us to move forward. And just lastly, when people ask how come it's not across the board, across the city, there are successful collective agreements which have been signed, and we respect that. And unfortunately, myself, I'm willing to sort of take the hit for the next couple of years, and we're looking towards us collectively, management and council, to share in this burden. Again, I would ask everyone, let's wait back to see where possibly 2.5 million translates into, what that translates into, what are some sort of areas in which we can throw that money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros. The next speaker is Councillor Fortini. Is that correct?
Yes. Mr. Chair, it's Councillor Vicente.
Oh, I don't see that on my.
Oh.
At 211 it says Councillor Fortini, and 212 it says Councillor Vicente.
My apologies. Yes, Councillor Fortini and then Councillor Vicente.
Okay, Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Medeiros. It's kind of funny how, all of us knocking doors here about taxes and all, and here we are trying to do a great job. And I'm not saying staff has done a bad job. They've done an amazing job. But at the end of the year, $1,800 on our paycheck, when you take tax, and Councillor Palashi, I understand what you're saying, that the staff has done an amazing job. But $1,800 on a gross pay, when you take it home at $700, it's not going to affect us. And when I see people, when I come home at 6 in the morning where I'm doing my business, and I see people waiting for the bus at $17 an hour, and we're all saying we got to help the small businesses and help the people. And meanwhile, here we are, we're getting raises. We should have got even less than that. But at the end of the day, 1 year, it's not going to affect our pocket. Well, look at what we make. Maybe some of us have a good job, a real job, and see what people are actually starving out there when they can't put food on their plate. On the breakfast program, I had to raise $60,000 when I see these kids go hungry to school in the morning because they got no food. And we're worried about $1,800. After tax deductible and all, it's probably $700. So, I'm very ashamed of what council says, and even Rowena, and I get what you're saying. I'm not criticizing staff or anything. Yes, everyone stepped up to the plate. But when we look at the pay increase, we're getting pay increases and we're freezing everything. What job have we done? How are we going to say to the resident, well, you freeze our taxes? Well, you got yourself a $3,000 raise. If you look at other corporations, a lot of corporations put a freeze on it to not lay off people. So when we wake up in the morning, we should be glad what we have, what we're doing for the residents. And I think we should step up to the residents and say, listen, we didn't take a pay increase to help you guys out. Because it's not fair when people are losing jobs and businesses are closing down and the government sends giving money, which they don't give anything. Trust me, I'm going through it now. And at the end, we're getting an increase. So I'm going to ask for a recorded vote. We have to go in camera. I'm going to stick to my motion. And the only reason I said to continue with the Hanson on the $1 million in the park is to give it back to the community. Simple. It's not much. And I'm sure a lot of the staff people I talk to are very happy that we're going to do a freeze rate for them. It's not going to kill them for 1 year. And, we would go walking around. We're talking, what's all we hear at the doors? Councillor Singh said, and Councillor Dillon said, everyone complains our taxes are high. So we're going to say we did 0, 3 years. Yeah, but you got yourself a nice raise. That's what we have to say to the doors. So I'm going to stick with that motion. I'm going to keep it that we do the freeze. We did it for 4 years last term. Councillor Dillon and I remember our past mayor put it forward, and nobody said a word. Nobody. We're asking 1 year, and we're crying. We are crying. You guys want to cry? Come on in the morning at 6 o'clock and see people wait for a bus that can't even go to work. I'm going to end there because I'm really, really upset when people say, well, as if we're blaming staff. I'm not blaming staff. They've done an amazing job. But that's not going to kill anyone, especially us councillors, and stuff that we actually work hard. We do. But, to have a little bit of dignity and say 1 year we're going to freeze the taxes. We're also not going to take a pay hike. It's not going to hurt us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Councillor Vicente is next.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to ask a question because I don't think this is clear. I see the motions on the screen, but, and I guess this is a small point of order. There's no seconder. Is there a seconder for this?
I believe there is. It's moved by Councillor Fortini, seconded by Councillor Medeiros.
And Councillor Dillon will second it too. Thank you.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, this is Budget Committee. A seconder is not required. That seems to have been a practice that's evolved during this meeting, but only a mover is required for committee. A seconder is only required at City Council.
And thank you for that clarification. No emotional pleas here from myself. I unequivocally do not support a freeze on staff salaries. I think that staff have gone above and beyond the call of duty throughout this year. And, I want to remind members of council that early on in the year, we all agreed that it was important that as the role of the city to be a stabilizing factor in the business community and in our community at large, to do everything that we can to help people and to help businesses. And in this case, with respect to staff, to be a mark of stability for staff. And I think that staff, having gone through a great deal this year, gapping and filling in positions, they have done so much to get us to the point where we are today, being within spitting distance, if you will, being able to not increase the city portion of our tax bill for the residents here, which is something that we all agree many residents have asked us to do. If someone has an open mic, can you shut it off, please? Thank you. And so I think that I don't really see a need for us to go in camera to discuss this to this point. We have been discussing it in public, and that's fine. I don't support a freeze on staff. Staff have done an unbelievable job this year. And I would just reserve my comments for the second motion. I would like to hear what other members of council have to say, but I may have some ideas later on. But I just want to be clear at this point that I do not support the motion for staff freeze. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dillon is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So obviously this is a tough conversation, and I think I've heard Councilor Santos and Councilor Vicente, and certainly they make excellent arguments. Our staff is amazing during the pandemic. They were working hard. For example, our BMO office, our bylaw, they've essentially been putting their themselves at risk in a lot of occasions. But I think this request is for non-union. Just like Councilor Bertini mentioned, when I get up in the morning, I see a lot of people at the bus stop. They take a bus and they go and they make minimum wage. Particularly in Ward 9 and 10, we have a lot of our taxpayers who work in warehouses. They work in manufacturing. They work in different factories. A lot of our taxi drivers, a lot of our limo drivers literally have been sacrificing their lives as well. 10 of our limo drivers have passed away who work at the Pearson Airport. A number of them live in my wards. I had a chance to go to a trail, Stephen Llewellyn Trail, and as I was walking by, so I was there for resident issues and flooding. As I was walking by, I saw a local business owner. He has a shop in Carole Bog Plaza, which is on Peter Robertson and Torburn, and he has to shut his business down. Just close to home, my sister-in-law lost her job during the pandemic. And what Councilor Fortini is saying is that, or Medeiros was saying is that, we have to set an example as well. And as councilors, we're privileged. I think we have to be realistic as well. We're very privileged. We're in a role where we don't have to worry about, at least for 4 years or 2 more years, job security. Even though I love our staff, they've been working extremely hard, but we're in a privileged situation where we have that job security. The people who are losing their businesses, the people who are losing their jobs, the people who are, sometimes we knock on these people who have basement apartments, but they have to rent their basement out so they can make ends meet. A townhouse these days costs $950,000 to $1 million. People need to live somewhere, but people can't work. And if we're setting an example, if we're showing the people, hey, listen, we walk the walk, we also talk the talk, but we're also gonna, get down in the trenches with you as well. We gotta, give ourselves a pay freeze for 1 year. We're gonna do that. Hopefully we can all get out the pandemic safely. We can get business back up and running. But I can't, just the same way I was unequivocal in my support for Councilor Peleshi's motion earlier, because that money's going back to the people. I'm unequivocal in my support for Councilor Pertini in this, because we got to set an example. If we can save money, if we can, what's the term I'm looking for? Kind of, get down and, save a little bit more money for our taxpayer. And I'm willing to support that, because this is taxpayer money that's going towards these salary increases. We're taking out of one pocket, putting it in the other. And I'm sure our staff can understand that, hey, listen, for a year, we're in a privileged situation. We got a job, but those people who are paying tax out there, it might help them out a little, or it might go towards a service or some type of facility that's going to help them out. So I totally understand where my other fellow councilors are coming from, but to me, for 1 year, I think this is a sacrifice, we have to make collectively. And I don't think there are many staff out there who would disagree with it either. So I fully support the motion if I'm able to. I'd like to also second this motion by Councilor Pertini. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Dillon. The next speaker is Councilor Williams.
Hi, yes, thank you, Mayor Brown. I have a question. This increase that will be given to non-union staff, is that considered a bonus? Is it a bonus that they're getting, or is it just their standard increase?
Thank you. Mayor, sorry, I was going to see if either HR is on the line to speak to that.
Sure, David. Through the chair to Councillor Williams, no, it's not a bonus. It is the structure that we have for pay for performance, which is the only way that we get our wage harmonized with the union groups. So depending on, a part of that portion is economic adjustment, which I think was proposed at 1.75%. And then the remaining is contingent on performance.
Okay.
Which can range.
Sorry?
Which could range, again, between 0 to 5%.
Okay, so this is a standard increase that matches the union staff increase that they have in their signed deal. And so this is not a bonus. This is a performance, almost like it's standard. So am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this topic, I really appreciate the empathy that Councillor Frattini is showing to those who are, and Medeiros and Councillor Dillon are showing for those who are really faced with tough times. And I think all of us on council feel the same way. We are all very active trying to be as supportive as we can. And, and even the staff working their butts off. Now, some of our staff are working with kids at home and also working with all of us to see all of our needs met, especially over this budget period. It's been pretty hectic. I don't know, some of our staff might be dealing with a death. Some of our staff may be dealing with their own financial implications. We don't know what our staff are going through. They're not going to tell us personally. And so to make the decision that our staff have to experience their own cut and pay, I think it's being made not with our staff in mind, our staff who are people and who are taxpayers as well. So I want us to also keep in mind that the ripple effect of this year with COVID, those impacts won't be felt until next year and beyond. Those impacts to the mental health of our staff who we've been asking to work with no vacation, everybody knows what it's like. When you're working from home, there is no distinction between leaving your office and going home. Everything is all mixed and mashed into one. And it can be difficult for many of our staff to cope with. So I think I really understand the importance of making a statement and showing our residents that we're in this with you. And I think where I'm hearing all of us on council saying that we want to make that statement. So I would support Councillor Paleshi's notion of splitting the motion, saying council only. And even that is kind of hard for me to say because I don't know what all the councillors are going through either. So to be able to say, I think we should freeze your pay, it's a hard one to do that, especially when this isn't a bonus year. These aren't bonuses, extra money just laying around that we're going to say, hey, since doing a great job, we had a great year fiscally, we're going to give you a bonus. That's not what we're looking at. This is standard increases that every single one working their butts off at the city is entitled to. So I would support splitting it and voting on whether or not just council has their wages frozen. But to do that to staff makes me feel very uncomfortable because, again, we don't know what all of our staff are going through. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, thank you. The next speaker is Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the sentiment on both sides of this debate. A lot of people are very passionate about this. All I'm going to say is that two things. We do try and have our non-union staff somewhat keep up with our unionized staff through increases. And if we are just taking it away from the non-union people and saying they're not going to get a salary increase, that is not fair to all the employees of the city of Brampton, where one group or several groups will be getting their increases due to the union contracts, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But we're penalizing other people who are working in the city of Brampton. I don't think that's right. As far as councillors are concerned, we did not have a salary freeze last year. I'm one of the councillors, along with several others, who did have the 4-year freeze that we talked about in the previous council. But this last year, we did get the cost of living allowance, but we passed a motion where all of us gave that cost of living allowance to a charity or to an organization. So, I mean, this year, there was, I don't know, $10,000 going to various charities and organizations that I think was very helpful during the COVID times. So whether council continues to do that and passes another motion to give that cost of living allowance to some charity, or whether they put a freeze on the councilor's salary this year, that is going to hurt some of those charities that were getting the money. That is not an issue for me, but the issue of fairness and equity with all the employees, that is an issue with me, and I want to see that it's done fairly throughout the city. I'm going to bring up something. That is probably going to hit some hard notes here, but I have no disrespect or no ill intent. But there are 4 councillors who are city councillors who make far less than our regional councillors as well. Now, that's fine, and that's why we chose to run as city councillors. I have no issue with that. I'm only asking our regional councillors, will you be bringing this up at the region and doing the same thing with the regional salaries as well? So I will just leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Willens is next.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, and I can appreciate what everybody's saying here. I can see both sides of it. I was going to mention the fact about we did give our cost of living allowance to chairs of our choice, so maybe that's something we can look at, that increase is deducted automatically for the 2021 budget and goes maybe perhaps to Osler for the ICU department in honor of the COVID workers, the frontline workers during the COVID crisis. But I'm not sure if we're voting on this today or not. I would like to take a holistic approach or look at this. I see both sides. I see Councillor Bertini's side, and I see Councillor Santos' side as well. I think we should take some time to look at this, and we can bring this and pass this next week at budget. We did talk yesterday, and I think Councilor Medeiros, you chimed in about putting motions, getting everybody to see motions and not necessarily have them walk on at this point in time. So all the council can review this. I would have liked to have reviewed this last night or even this morning, but I didn't. This is the first time I've seen this, so I'm not comfortable supporting something like this. I mean, last night you all got a motion from me in regarding to the gardening program and the EMP, the Environmental Master Plan. So I think it's only fair to the councillors to have a closer look at this, and maybe it's better we do have a report come back from staff. And if we have to go into a closed session prior to budget, I'm good with that too. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, your microphone's muted. I have the next speaker being Councilor Medeiros, but we'll wait for the mayor.
Sorry, Peter, I don't think, I just made a comment, but I'm not next.
So Mayor Brown, your microphone is still muted, but after Councilor Medeiros, the next speaker is Councilor Santos, followed by Councilor Fortini.
Wait, Peter, what about myself, Councillor Singh? I haven't spoken and I put it in. Did you see it? Or?
And I'm sorry, yes, Councilor Singh, I see on the list too.
Where do I fall?
You are after
my
Councilor
internet
Fortini.
for the last 2 minutes. I'm back on as Mayor Brown.
Councillor Singh, you can go ahead. I'm speaking for the second time, so you could go before me if the chair, if that's something you want to do.
Okay, so why don't we have those who haven't spoken go first, and to the clerk, is that just Councillor Singh who hasn't spoken yet?
That's correct. And following Councilor Singh, then would be Councilor Santos, followed by Councilor Fortini.
Okay,
Yeah.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I'd like to move a deferral, please, to our next budget meeting on this motion.
Sorry, just for clarification through you, Mr. Mayor, did you, Councilor Singh, say a deferral to the next budget committee meeting?
Yep.
There is no budget committee meeting scheduled. This is the unless you're referring to this evening. There's a session at 7 o'clock tonight, but no further meetings have been scheduled.
Yep, that's what I'm referring to.
So the motion then is a deferral to tonight's 7 p.m. budget committee session. A deferral motion is not debatable, and committee must take it to a vote immediately.
Sorry, Mr. Clerk, Peter, I already asked to bring this report back and come back at the final day of budget.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, Councillor Fortini, you did move that when you originally moved it and it is on the screen. However, in your follow-up remarks, you made a comment that you're sticking to your motion because the debate of committee over the last half hour has been on the merits of the motion, not on the merits of a referral to the special council meeting. So I've been taking the debate over the last little while as being on the merits of the motion itself. So the referral to the special council meeting was removed. That's the way I interpreted how the debate's been unfolding. Having said that, a deferral motion has been placed, which takes precedent over a referral, and a deferral motion would have to be voted on immediately. That's my advice, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. But on my motion there, it was you put down what you put down. I can't really see it. Well, it's for senior management. It should have been all non-union senior management.
By Councilor Fortini, it says that all non-union management salaries and members of council compensation. That's exactly what it says.
Yeah, but non-union senior management.
It just says all non-union management. It doesn't say senior management. It says all non-union.
Okay, that's fine. I'll wait for tonight. Another debate. Thank you.
So a clarification to the clerk. I don't believe we have any agenda items for tonight. So if there's no council meeting tonight, what happens to this motion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if the deferral motion carries, then there will be a session tonight because committee has voted to meet this evening to consider this motion. If the motion does not carry, then another motion could be placed. But at this point, this afternoon session and this evening session are the only current scheduled dates for Budget Committee.
Okay, so can I ask the mover of the motion as a friendly if he would say that next week, that way if it passes, we don't have a meeting just to discuss this tonight?
Yep, I'm good with that. I thought that was Councilor Fortini's original intention. And I'm gonna stop speaking, and it's the deferrals on the floor for that meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so there's no debate because it's a deferral. Can the clerk conduct the vote?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wish to clarify now because Councillor Singh has withdrawn a deferral motion, which is non-debatable. It is now a referral motion because it's going from the Budget Committee to the special council meeting next week, which is debatable should council wish to debate, committee wish to debate it. Otherwise, we can proceed with the vote immediately.
Is it a deferral till next week?
It is a referral. You cannot defer from one committee to a superior body. It's a referral from the Budget Committee to City Council. That's a referral.
Okay. Okay. In that case, if someone wants to speak to the referral, they can.
Okay. So I'm okay with it. Staff's going to bring a report back, and we'll wait for next week at the budget meeting. And if we have to go in camera, that will be fine too. What legal says, but bring in the next week and we can vote on it next week. So I'm fine with it.
Mayor, I need, it's David here, some clarity, and perhaps the clerk can guide. If this motion is being referred, that means it didn't pass with respect to staff doing a report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct, unless there's a condition added to the referral. So right now, the way it's worded is the motion itself is being referred to the special council meeting next week, and there is nothing specific at this point in this referral motion as to any other information to come back to accompany that motion.
Yeah, Councillor Singh, I know you're trying to be helpful. It might be cleaner just to vote on the motion directly so staff know whether to do a staff report or not.
Sure, I'll pull it back then. It depends what my colleagues say. I'll listen to them.
Okay, who's next? Peter, I've lost track.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Santos, followed by Councillor Fortini and Councillor Singh. Councillor Dillon. So Councillor Santos is next.
Councillor Santos. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I had further comment. I've listened to some of the other comments as well. And while I understand what Councillor Fortini may be trying to suggest through this first motion, specifically related to the salary freeze for non-unionized management, I will have to say that our staff are people too. I think in this conversation we're trying to separate as if staff are staff and are not human beings who don't have families, who aren't possibly single parents or single moms themselves, who don't work crazy long hours in the same way that others work crazy long hours. Our staff, non-unionized and unionized, they donate regularly to the United Way, who end up supporting many of the organizations that service the city of Brampton and the entire region of Peel. They volunteer their time for those United Way efforts. They volunteer their time, not overtime, but they volunteer their time to service the city and go above and beyond. And so while I appreciate the sentiment and perhaps this does something in terms of optics to make it seem as if freezing salaries of people who live in our city, who work in our city, who contribute to the local economy when they are here, as if freezing their salaries is going to show that we care less or more about whether or not a tax freeze is warranted. And we already know that we're going to have a tax freeze anyway. So if, as per my comments earlier during the motion before this one, if we are challenged next year with operating issues, because right now it was clear that there are no service impacts right now, if we are challenged with operating issues next year, then perhaps we can consider this maybe next year. But for this year, I certainly do not support it. And I don't appreciate that we are comparing staff as if they're not people or human beings, don't live in our city, don't take transit, don't ride the bike lanes, don't do this, don't do that. They are part of our city. They are part of the team. They are part of the city. They live in the city, and they also contribute to the local economy and the local charities. And we're already getting to 0%. So again, I'm happy to vote on this motion now. I'm fine to have it as a recorded vote. I will not be supporting it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I will vote for my own freeze of my salary if that's optically what people want to show residents. I'm happy to do that, no problem. And I'm also happy to support city councillors because I think it's unfair that city councillors get paid less than regional councillors. And if city councillors, I think, shouldn't accept a salary freeze, and I'd be happy to support that as well. So again, I would be voting no for the staff salary freeze, and I will be voting depending on whatever the amendments may be coming forward. But as the motion stands right now, for various councillors for my own salary as a regional councillor, I will be voting to freeze my own salary.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Councillor Fortini, followed by Councillor Dillon, then Councillor Medeiros. I believe Councillor Medeiros wants to speak to the referral that is no longer a referral, so maybe he can clarify in the chat box.
Sorry, my apologies, Mayor. I was speaking to the referral. I guess the referral has been taken back?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess,
you were third on the list. Just checking if.
I'll just wait then. Thank you.
But you want to stay on the list, Councillor Medeiros?
Yes.
Okay. The next speaker.
Councillor Fortini.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to, I understand what Councillor Rowena Santos is saying. And Councillor Bowman, last term, I was a councillor too. We did it for 4 years. And I understand what you're saying, and no one complained. And I sat there for 4 years with no increase. So I'm only asking 1 year, and here we are crying about 1 year. And I'm not saying, and again, I don't repeat staff has done it. Maybe if we look at our salaries, we should go a little bit more deeper dive but I'm not going to go that route because I don't want to put more words in people. But I'm looking all over social media, people saying car allowance and salaries increase, all this crap that we're getting. And meanwhile, we got people now. Coming back to Councillor Bowman, he's correct. We do charities and stuff. Maybe we should, since we had an increase, we should provide that list where each councillor actually sent money of their choice to each charity and put it up on the website to show if we actually did give it out or didn't give it out. So if we want to continue giving it to charity or increase, I'm fine with that too. But, you know, to come here and sit over saying that staff, and I'm saying senior management and councillors. I'm not asking for the working person who's making $60,000 a year as non-union. It's senior management. If you look at their pay, you're telling me they're okay, where most of us are all at home working, and they work hard. So, again, you know, if you actually look at the tax ratio, at the end of the year, it doesn't make a difference. It won't make no difference on our pay. That's my last comment. And I'm going to continue, and I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, and everyone can vote as they please.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Councillor Dillon.
Okay, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you. I just actually originally got on the board because there was the deferral moved, and I thought it just might have been more appropriate to just have the referral and come back whichever way it goes, and then council can decide. But you know, I just want to just recognize what Councillor Santos has said, and you know, I do agree with you. I think a lot of our residents do live in. Sorry, a lot of our employees do live in Brampton, and I hope that my previous comments, you know, I wasn't coming off too hard on them, but I just want to say that I thought that, you know, collectively we could, you know, we could sacrifice slightly just for 1 year. And so, but whichever way it does go, you know, I'm fine with that. But I do think, I do still support Councilor Fattini's motion, but I just wanted to add that I think we really need to kind of narrow down what we're doing in whether it's senior management or whether it's management as a whole who's non-union. Now I'm hearing councillors, and I'm hearing, you know, we should prove that we, you know, donated. I think we're really muddying it. I think we should just get to whatever we're going to vote. So Councilor Fattini, if you could just put it forward, let's just vote on it, and whatever happens, let it happen.
Okay, Councillor Medeiros, is that correct?
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor. Again, I just want to, I don't know where to start, because I think some of my colleagues, never once did we say that people are not people or that people don't deserve respect. I think there's a funny thing called math. And if you do the math, you're saving a 0.5 percentage point over 2 years that will allow us to invest in really important projects for the city. So 2.5 million, as our treasurer has confirmed, if you sort of add 1 + 1, you get 2.5 million. So if we collectively, with senior management, make this decision, which is ultimately, I understand for some of you know, the new councillors that this is a difficult decision, and I understand they probably have affinities to certain management, or they feel a friendship, or they feel respect for, you know, valuable work, and I don't deny that. But I think if you start looking at how do we find savings, again, let me remind everyone, we just passed a zero. A zero does not come without suffering. So we've basically cushioned this. We've not been pragmatical. We've put a soft sort of landing spot to say, yeah, we did a zero. Yes, we added more services, or we're ensuring service levels remains the same. Oh yes, and never mind inflation. Yeah, that's just a funny thing. Over 3 years, this will be, oh yeah, 3 years, it's been what, 6% under inflation? Yeah, but that's math, guys. Like, it's not me. It's not me feeling, you know, all soft and tingly, or it's not me trying to be a bad guy. I'm just asking people to do their numbers. And we're not here to sort of, you know, get along. I'm not here to ensure that people feel all cuddly and nice. You know, I want people to feel that, you know, they're proud to what the work they do, but it's math. And residents want us to do our math. Residents want a zero. Residents don't want to hear
that we're doing a zero, and then after in a couple of years, when we sit back and we say, well, if we did that freeze, we would have $2.5 million. That could have did those bus stops. I could have did that, soccer field. I could have did that, A, B, and C. Anyways, I appreciate, I respect everyone, but I do want to just recognize Councillor Bowman did make an excellent point in terms of the same councillors, including myself, then, this should be brought to the region as well. And I do appreciate those sentiments, and I do appreciate that regional councillors, we make more, so the hit isn't as much. So there is, I'm not sensitive to that point, but I will leave it to the mover of the motion to sort of, what he wants to do with the motion. I will sort of support it, and I thank you very much. But again, it's about the numbers. It's about the math. Thank you very much.
The next speaker, Mr. Mayor, is Councillor Bowman, followed by Councillor
Well,
Vicente.
Just one question, Peter. To the mover of the motion, is it a friendly to have this apply to the region as well? Now, the region would have to ratify this to freeze their non-union management salaries and regional councillor salaries, but is it a friendly to add it to the motion that this request go to the region appeal as well? Councillor Frattini?
No issue. If it passes here, yes.
Okay, so Peter, can you wordsmith that in?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it would only be a request because it would be up to regional council to make that decision.
Yeah, that's Mr. Mayor if it passes here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
And the clerk can send that as correspondence if this passes to the region appeal.
Point of order, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, just Mr. Chair, that would be pending council's decision next week.
Yes. Yes. Okay, a point of order. Who do I hear a point of order from?
It's Councillor Vicente.
Yeah.
Did we not ask that these pieces be separated out into separate motions, the non-union management salary piece and the member of council compensation? Just to the clerk, I guess.
So, through you, Mr. Chair. So that was a comment that was made by a member of committee, and when it's time to vote, that's why the motion was constructed to have both those parts in the first clause, and should a request be made, it can be split as a separate vote. But we haven't got to the point of voting yet.
Thank you, Ms. Kirk. I think that request was made, so can we see that reflected on the screen, or do we have to wait?
Mr. Chair, we can make that amendment while members are speaking to the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Peter.
Through you, Mr. Chair, is Councillor Bowman.
Councillor Bowman, and then it's Pelesci and then Vicente.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to respond quickly to Councillor Fortini. In no way was I complaining about the 4 years that we did it. I was just stating a fact that we did freeze our salaries for 4 years. And I'm just wondering whether he would be open to a friendly amendment that the cost of living allowance for the council members, and that's what we're basically talking about here. We did it last year, and I would really like to see that continue, that we pass a motion that each one of us donates our cost of living allowance to a charity, that whether it be the hospital for COVID, whether it be to the Knights Table or to Regeneration. But in that way, those charities are still getting the funds, and you know, it's just we're $1,200 each, approximately. That's $12,000 that it will not be going to charities that also need that money next year. So I just wondered whether Councillor Fortini would consider that as a friendly.
Yes, I have no problem. That's a great thought. Thank you.
Okay. And okay, I'll save my comments till after everyone has spoken. I've got some friendly suggestions as well. Councillor Pelesci.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I was just, alluding to before, and a lot of members have kind of brought it up. So I think it's nothing that we haven't tried before when we're talking about maybe freezing regional councilors instead of the city councilors. We've asked that question before, and if Peter, can you remind me, are we able to here at the municipality freeze only the city councilors that also have regional responsibilities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if council were to make a decision to adjust member of council salaries at Brampton City Council, presumably it would apply to all 10 members of council, whether they're city or regional councilor. There is no mechanism or authority for Brampton City Council to adjust the compensation level for regional councilors as paid by the region. That is only a regional council decision. I'm sorry, is that the question you were asking?
So kind of, but only at the local, only at city council can. So we cannot reduce city councilors. So we're all city councilors here at the municipality. We cannot reduce the city councilors' salary for the ones that also have the regional responsibilities here at the municipality. We can only reduce all 11 members.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's entirely within council's purview if they wish to have a different tier of compensation for those city councilors that also sit at the region versus those that sit only at city council, but that has not been the practice to date.
Oh, okay. All right. So that does open up that opportunity. I thought we had asked that question before and there was no avenue to do that. Just to some of the members in trying to bring this to the region, this is not something that we haven't done before. We have tried to bring this to the region before and we were not successful. And if any regional member wants to try it again, I'll be right there with you to try and reduce all regional councilors' salaries or freeze regional councilors' salaries at the region as well. I revert back to the city councilors and having the discussion along the lines of freezing councilors' budget, but then I also look forward to maybe Councillor Santos in what you're referring to, and maybe just freezing our salary at the city for the ones that that also go to the region. If we'd like to look at that, I'd be open to having that discussion. I think that in terms of what Councillor Bowman was referring to, and maybe others, and having the freeze or whatnot, whatever you're referring to, and donating that money to any not-for-profit or agency, I think that comes with its own set of issues, and I don't think I could support the way we did it before. I think if we wanted to do that, we would have to look at some alternative way to do that. That I would be open to having that discussion as well. But again, I'd like to just go back and say, Councillor Fortini, and some of the comments from Councillor Dillon and Councillor Medeiros as well. I get it. I understand what you're trying to achieve. And if you want to put this as a placeholder to be one of the first things that we discuss next year, so that everybody knows what we're talking about, it's not a shock. It's not anything to the effect that it's something that we're going to look at, we're going to discuss for next year. I'm happy to have that conversation. I just don't think that now is the time, coming off the year that we did. We should be looking at this now, and that's why I'm not going to support that portion of it. But still happy to have the discussion at the councillor level to freeze our own salaries, which I've always been supportive of in the past. And maybe it's time to actually look at our budget all together and look at opportunities where we can save money through each councillor's budget as well. I guess we're going to have further discussions about this as this is going to be coming back for debate, I guess, next week. Is that correct, Peter?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if this motion carries today, it's a recommendation of the Budget Committee that is still up for debate at the special council meeting next Wednesday evening.
Okay, so I was going to ask Mr. Barrick just some questions around uncompensated overtime and savings for the city through this pandemic, with respect to also vacancies and other gapping. But maybe if I can just put that as I'm happy to, if he would like to respond, I'm happy to listen, or if he'd like to take that away and come back when this motion is ratified, is looking at being ratified next week.
Well, thank you, Councillor. Through the mayor, just because I'm not sure where this resolution will look like or where it will go, I do appreciate the opportunity to just highlight a couple of items. Most of which council is already aware of through, I believe, the memo that has been circulated. But I think on a high level, with respect to the goal of achieving zero has been met. And if it's about saving money, well, from a staff perspective, certainly non-union and all staff really did that this year in 2020 during the pandemic, as you see through the Q3 report. Saving in excess of $30 million in 2020 to help offset what would be the deficit position and to dip into reserves. So that's been through, again, significant workload, lack of overtime compensation compared to others, including Peel Region. We always have natural compression challenges. And this would only serve to exacerbate that, which is a whole slew of other corporate HR challenges when we talk about labor relations. The other piece is it has been highlighted by many of you in terms of the morale aspect, in terms of the value in the conversations of repurposing some of this money for park enhancements or something else. Certainly is something to consider in terms of the individuals being affected and the work that they've been putting in place so far. I would add, the perception of negatively impacting the brand of City of Brampton as an employer of choice. And the concept of having at some point to add it in later. In other words, in perpetuity is not sustainable. And so at some point it would be an add-on, and the perception of raising taxes to give a raise also is something to be cognizant of. So I think there's a couple of elements here. Certainly, I would not recommend it for all the reasons that I've outlined. Ultimately, as you noted, the decision does rest with council, but there are some of these challenges that go beyond from a zero to a less than zero, or repurposing the dollars. So understanding the intent and how it impacts even next year is helpful. Thank you.
And thank you for that, Mr. Barrick. And I understand perfectly that you're just trying to provide us with some information, but like you state many, many times, ultimately it is council's decision. Ultimately, you will do what council requests. And I thank you for stating that each and every time. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have.
Okay. Next, is that the last question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have Councillor Vicente, followed by Councillor Dillon.
Okay.
I was just going to make perhaps a suggestion to Councillor Fortini. Maybe you withdraw it and then, kind of work with staff, or maybe look at some numbers, have some more discussions. And then if you want, we can discuss it next week. So that's just a question to Councillor Fortini through the chair. Suggestion, rather.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker I have on my list is Councillor Vicente.
Okay, Councillor
Mr.
Vicente.
Mayor, I think I was supposed to answer that. So you know what? I guess everyone's going to be crying over a little bit of pay. I'll withdraw my motion. How's that? Maybe you guys could go tell your residents.
Mr. Mayor,
It's okay.
I believe I was on the board.
So I'll withdraw my motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Vicente, if the motion's been withdrawn, then there's no debate left. I'll ask the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you recognize Councillor Fortini, but he wasn't the next one to speak. I mentioned that the next person to speak was Councillor Vicente. If you're recognizing Councillor Fortini for his withdrawal of the motion, then the motion is withdrawn unless another member wishes to take it up.
Well, I recognize Councillor Dillon, who asked the question of Councillor Fortini, and so I think in fairness, we can accept Councillor Fortini withdrawing the motion.
Mr. Mayor, that's not fair to me.
Well, I think everyone's had an extensive debate. If Councillor Fortini wishes to withdraw the motion, then I think we have to respect that. But whatever comments you want to say, I'm sure there's still opportunities to speak in budget before we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter, what's the next item?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is it for the motions. The clerk's office has not received any other motions for today's budget committee deliberations. So unless there is...
Councillor Vicente, if you want to ask a question of staff, you could probably get whatever you're going to say out in that question of staff.
Yeah, that's okay, Mr. Mayor. I'll leave it there.
Okay. So now we have the motions to the city clerk.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there are a number of motions. The last items of business on the agenda are councillor question period for councillors to ask questions of staff regarding matters within the purview of the budget committee. Then I would suggest that we probably take a recess for maybe 5 or 10 minutes to take these motions, incorporate them into the summary of motions that have already been prepared from the last several days, and then reconvene so committee can go through the entire length of motions and take a final vote. And then that would be followed by public question period, to be followed by adjournment if there's no other business to be conducted.
Okay, so you said 5 minutes?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 5 minutes would be appreciative. I don't know if Finance or the CEO's office, if there's any other items to be discussed before the final set of recommendations is presented to committee.
Clerk, do we have question periods for councillors?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I didn't hear Councillor Fortini. Sorry.
Councillor Fortini wanted to know if there's a time to for a councillor question period.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can probably do that now. And while that is going on, perhaps we can try and get the motions prepared for the summary of recommendations, so then committee would not have to take a recess. So we can do our best to get that ready while there's councillor question period.
Through the chair, if I may. Peter, I think it would be useful if we had a little bit of time to chat about the motions.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Through you, how much time do you think we'll need?
Maybe 5-10 minutes.
Okay.
So what I suggest is after the question period, then we will break for 10 minutes.
Thank you. That would be helpful, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I believe there's Councilor Medeiros has a question, and then Councilor Fortini.
Oh, just a point of clarification, Mayor Brown. Are we going over each department's budget? Are we voting individually, or are we voting on everything in the package?
I will ask the clerk to advise.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as occurred with the 2020 budget, it'll be voting on as a package. We'll be receiving all the presentations, but there are some specific amendments, or I should say exceptions, to accommodate the 3 members of committee who declared conflict, so they can be voted on separately. But the intent as for 2021 budget, as we did for the 2020 budget, is to vote on the corporate department's budget as a package. However, it's been amended through some of the motions that carried through the budget committee.
So I'd like to separate and us vote on each department, please.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we can do that, but I'm going to suggest then we need more than 10 minutes to get ready for that.
Yeah,
Okay,
so that'd be on each departments and each budget areas to be covered.
Okay.
So Mr. Mayor, my advice would be after councillor question period, we recess till 4 o'clock to allow staff to get the summary of recommendations ready and converse with the CAO's office and finance so we can put the final set of budget recommendations before committee.
Yeah. Why don't we wait and see how long question period takes before we determine the time that we reconvene?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Medeiros, any other questions?
Well, I had some questions of clarification, but I think the way I vote during my budget will be addressed. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councilor Pertini.
I'll wait for the final budget. I got some questions. Thank you.
Okay, so in that case, it's 3:22. Peter, how much time do you require?
Mr. Mayor, I think to be safe, I would request till 4 o'clock.
Okay, it's 3:22 now. We'll reconvene at 4 o'clock.
Point of order.
Yes, Councillor Palashi.
I've heard two members say that they're going to be speaking when the motions come forward. I'm getting the feeling like we're going to maybe possibly be going into the possibility of debate, and if that's what members are maybe alluding to, then maybe what we should be doing is coming back tonight to start going through the moving of the motions then, because that's like we could be essentially if we're going to open up these motions again for I thought we already went through debate and stuff.
So Councillor Palashi, the way I interpreted the comment was that they would be speaking to it at the budget meeting, which is the special council meeting we were having on it.
Okay. Sorry, my apologies then. Okay.
But no, but I should clarify. Was that what you meant, Councillor Ferdini?
Yes.
Okay.
Regarding Mayor Brown, sorry. Yeah, no, I'm going to ask to separate parts of the vote on certain departments, and that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll reconvene at 4 o'clock, and hopefully it won't take that much time for those that have kids to pick up or take places. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We are making great progress. We're getting through this. Healthy debate is good debate. It's all part of the democratic process. So thank you, everyone, for your consideration. To the clerk, we'll
the draft set of summary recommendations.
motions up on the screen. And of course, if any citizens want to have additional input, we do have the actual budget ratification meeting where we can have another vigorous debate. There's no shortage of opportunities for input in our budget process. This is the first year we've ever had an entirely virtual budget process due to COVID-19. A little bit different than the first year when we had coffee meetings around the city, in-person delegations, but I think we've been able to engage citizen input in this process despite the obvious health precautions. So thanks to Mark Medeiros and Peter Fay and everyone who has worked so diligently on this process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of committee. So I believe we are ready to proceed. So we can bring up the summary of recommendations. And what I propose to do with your approval and committee's approval is we can go through them in groups. There are some recommendations that are more procedural, but I want committee to see all the recommendations that have been considered, and then the final recommendations at the very end of this list of summary of recommendations are the more substantive ones that approve the budget as amended through the course of the motions that were introduced during the series of meeting sessions over the last week. So as we bring up those motions, the first group, sorry, Mr. Mayor and members of committee, is that fine in terms of how you wish to proceed?
Yes.
Okay. So the first motion, which is on the screen, is to just approve the agenda. And then I'll go through the next set of motions are on receiving the overview presentation from the CAO and the acting treasurer. And we can scroll down a little bit, Charlotte. And then to receive the various departmental presentations. So this is just receiving the presentations, not approving the budget. So perhaps, Mr. Mayor, if you just want to take a vote on that first group of recommendations.
Okay. So do we need approval of the agenda first? And do you need a mover and a seconder?
We do have movers and seconders. If you can just take another vote just to confirm all of the recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor of the recommendations? Hearing none, the motion carries.
So now we can go to delegation, Charlotte. So that vote was for presentations. So for delegations, there were a series of delegations. The first was on November 24th. There were a number of individuals that delegated. And then if we can scroll down, there were additional delegations received on the 26th and also on November 30th. As well as part of the delegations on November 30th, there was a referral of the tennis club's delegation to staff for a report, as well as the request from the Homeowners Welfare Association with respect to a police station for Brampton East to be referred to staff for a report. And that is complementary to the Councillor Dillon motion we'll get to in a few moments. And sorry, in fact, the Councillor Dillon motion is next, which we can go to the operative paragraphs, and they speak to that the Mayor and Council sent a letter to Peel Regional Police requesting a community station or satellite office in Brampton's East End for all the reasons outlined in the motion, and staff be directed to identify a location and cost for a potential community station or satellite office in Brampton's East End to be provided to Peel Police at no or minimal cost. So perhaps we can take a vote on that group of motions at this point in time.
Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
So then following that, we have the added delegations that were received today. And then the next one below that, if you can just go down, thanks, Charlotte. There is the delegation regarding the head wall replacement, which was received on Tuesday, November 24th. And Mr. Mayor, if we can just take a vote on those two sets of motions, please.
Okay, is there anyone opposed to those two sets of motions? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Now we get into more of the substantive recommendations of the budget. The first group is the local board presentations and budget. The first is the Brampton Library 2021 operating and capital budget request, and it is requesting as set out on here with an amendment in regards to additional funding support, and the numbers that are cited here will be incorporated into a further motion towards the end of the summary of recommendations. So, Mr. Mayor, if you wish to take a vote on this
I believe there's a question from Councillor Paleshi before I take this vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question just relation to what we're doing now. Peter, is it the same along the lines of we'll be doing the exact same thing format one by one when it comes to final ratification?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is final ratification for the Budget Committee, as I understand it. If you're suggesting that this occur at the special council meeting next week, we can do that if that's the will of council.
Okay, so I'm asking you then, Mr. Mayor, if it's all going to be separated at final ratification, the special council meeting, I'll be looking to call on a recorded vote. If it's not, and we're going to do it all into one, maybe recorded votes for each of the substantive motions and presentations, a recorded vote be placed now then. But I'm at the will of the committee.
I imagine we'll have a recorded vote on Wednesday, but it's to whatever the council wishes.
Okay, I'm okay with that then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so all those in favor of the library motion, BUOOO 2021. Are there anyone opposed? Motion carries.
The next local board set of motions is for the downtown Brampton Business Improvement Area, and the motion is on the screen for the committee, Mr. Mayor, for the committee's approval.
Okay. Councilor Fortini, did you want to speak at the end of this or at the end of all the motions?
I can do it now. So all these motions are done. We're not putting no more motions at the final council meeting, or we're allowed to, Peter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are still in committee. I would say that a member could introduce a motion. However, there seemed to be some consensus amongst the committee that the committee has exhausted the debate on additional motions, and when we recessed, it was to compile all the motions and then go through them as we're doing now for final ratification as a set of recommendations to the special council meeting next week.
Okay, that's just for clarification. So no motions can be added to next week. That's what I'm trying to say.
That is completely correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of the BIA motion, BUOOO 2021. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
So the next set of motions relate to specific staff reports that were introduced during the various budget sessions, and we'll do all of the 8 group at once. The first report was on for receipt of the third quarter operating budget and reserve report. 8.2 was the capital project financial status report for Q3. 8.3 was the 2021 user fee recommendations for user fee adjustments. 8.4 was receipt of supporting documentation regarding pre-budget discussions and questions from members of council and responses from city staff. 8.5 was supporting documentation regarding the 2020 telephone town hall and other public feedback into the 2021 budget deliberations. And 8.6 was a report on the driveway head walls in the Lionhead Executive Estate subdivision, and there is a substantive recommendation in there which is already carried once to make an adjustment to incorporate option 4 into the budget for the rehabilitation of those head walls. And the final recommendation at the bottom of that page was the recommendation moved by, I believe, Councillor Medeiros, which achieves the same intent as the staff recommendation. They're complementary to one another. And I believe, Charlotte, if you can just scroll down, I just want to confirm. Yeah, that's that group of recommendations for consideration, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so all those in favor of those 8 recommendations? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
So the next group of recommendations are just various pieces of correspondence, and I think it was approaching 100 different pieces of correspondence that were received. for the budget deliberations. So that's item 10.1, to receive those. And there was additional correspondence that was sent directly to the mayor, and that's identified in this motion as well. And so we can take a motion or a vote, sorry, on the correspondence items under item 10.
Okay. All those in favor of correspondence? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
And then we have other new business, which there's a group of them. The first is receiving additional information provided by staff in response to questions from budget committee members during the course of deliberations. And I think we can just take a vote on this one, and then we'll get into the substantive motions for the approval of the budget.
Anyone opposed to 11.1, 2021 to 2023 current and capital budget approval? Hearing no one opposed, the motion carries.
So then we'll get into the detailed operating and capital budget motions. So Charlotte, if you can scroll down, I think the first set are struck out because we have broken them down by department. So the first is for the Public Works and Engineering Department. So it's approving the 2021 operating budget, approving the 2021 capital budget, and approving in principle the 2022 and 2023 capital budget. I will note in clause 2 that there was a specific clause that references the compensation portion of the Public Works and Engineering Department. I believe it was Councillor Willens who had declared a conflict. So my advice would be that we take a separate vote on paragraphs 1, 3, and 4. Councillor Willens can participate in that. And then we can take a separate vote on paragraph 2, for which Councillor Willens will have to excuse himself.
Okay, Councillor Willens, is that what you want to say?
Yeah, that's correct. But Peter, how do you want me to do it? Do you want me to sign off so you know I'm off and then sign back in?
That's not required, Councillor. You can just step away for a moment.
Okay, fair enough.
So, Mr. Mayor, the first vote would be on paragraphs 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, all those in favor?
Councillor Willens, you can participate in that part of the vote, 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
So now Councillor Willens has stepped away for paragraph 2.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. We can go to the next department, which is Fire and Emergency Services. So it's the 2021 operating budget, the 2021 capital budget, and in principle, 2022-2023 capital budget.
Okay. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? The fire and emergency budget passes.
The next department is the Transit Department, Brampton Transit. So it's the 2021 operating and capital budget and 2022-2023 capital budgets in principle.
Anyone opposed to the operating operating capital budget for the Transit Department? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
The next motion is for the Community Services Department. Again, the 2021 operating and capital budget and 2022-2023 capital budget in principle.
Anyone opposed to the Community Services Department budget? Hearing none, the motion carries.
The next group is for the Corporate Support Services Department. So it relates to the 2021 operating budget, 2021 capital budget, and in paragraph 4, 2022-2023 capital budget in principle. Paragraph 2 speaks to the grant funding portion as it relates to particularly operating grants that I think originate or are managed through the Strategic Communications Group. And Councillor Bowman, you had declared a conflict with respect to grant funding portion. So this is one part for which you should step away for paragraph 2. But before you step away, Mr. Mayor, as a whole, committee can vote on paragraphs 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, all those in favor of parts 1, 3, and 4? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion carries.
And part
now,
2,
Councillor Bowman has stepped out, and so we'll take a vote on part 2. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you. The next motion is for the Planning, Building, and Economic Development Department for the 2021 operating and capital budget, and in principle, the 2022 and 2023 capital budget. As well, there is a grant funding portion of this budget. So paragraph 2, Councillor Bowman will need to step away. And before he does that, as a whole, committee can vote on paragraphs 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, all those in favor of portions 1, 3, and 4? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Councillor Bowman has stepped out again for part 2. Anyone opposed to part 2? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you.
This takes us, yeah.
We'll now go to the Legislative Services Department budget for the 2021 operating and capital, as well as 2022 and 2023 capital and principal. It's shown in yellow. There was an amendment to incorporate the addition of 4 bylaw enforcement officers with no levy impact. That will also come up in a later motion in terms of the final amendments. As well, paragraph 2 speaks to the compensation portion of enforcement and bylaw services, as Councillor Fortini declared a conflict. So before Councillor Fortini steps away, all of committee can vote on paragraphs 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, all those in favor of items 1, 3, and 4? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion carries. For part 2, Councillor Fortini has stepped out. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, part 2 carries.
The next department is the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, and it's for the 2021 operating budget, 2021 capital budget, and 2022 and 2023 capital budget in principle.
Okay, all those in favor? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion carries.
The next motion is, I believe, for, that's just a duplicate, Charlotte. We can just go past that one. The next one is for general government. There are other accounts, and Mark, perhaps you can just chime in just to confirm. We just assumed that there may be other general accounts that are not department specific, but this is adopting those for 2021, capital and operating as they apply, and 2022, 2023 capital in principle.
Through the chair, that's correct. There isn't any capital there, Peter, so maybe we can just focus on the operating, which is basically the taxes and the contributions to reserves primarily.
Okay, so it would only be the first paragraph then. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
The next set of motions are some of the motions that were introduced today. The first is from Councillor Willens regarding the community garden, backyard garden program. And the substantive paragraph is that the 2021 budget request of $150,000 be amended by $100,000 for a total of $250,000.
Okay, any objections to the community garden motion? Hearing none, the motion carries.
The next motion is again from Councillor Willens in regards to the Grow Green Environmental Master Plan. And the operative paragraph is to do an amendment to the budget for increasing the budget by $300,000 from $200,000 to $500,000 for 2021, 2022, and 2023.
Okay, the environmental master plan motion, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
The next motion is from Councillor Paleshi, and in regards to community benefits at a ward level, and it's resolved that staff be directed to implement the community benefits plan as outlined per the Parks and Rec Master Plan for the 2021 budget, and the implications of up to $1 million per ward.
Is there anyone opposed to the cash in lieu motion for the $1 million per ward for community benefits? Hearing none, the motion carries.
The next motion is, Charlotte, if you can just bring it down so it's all on one page, thank you. This is an adjustment motion, so this is adjusting the operating budget to include the following adjustments that have come up, some of which have already been voted on. One is the insurance premiums, expenditure reduction, the increase in the levy assessment growth, the Equity Office, the Center for Excellence and Capital Compliance, the Community Safety Office, the increased public communications, the Council Community Outreach, the library adjustments, which have already been incorporated, the enforcement officers, which have already been incorporated, and the offsetting contributions to reserves.
Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
The next motion is our amendments to the 2021 capital budget based on conversations that have occurred during Budget Committee, specifically in relation to Riverwalk, community living, the environmental master plan, some of which has already been voted on, community gardens, backyard garden program, the reduction of internet voting as a capital budget request for 2022, and mobile inspect, which has a net zero budget impact.
All those in favor? Is there anyone against? I don't think Theodore was expressing his displeasure. By the way, he likes this budget. Hearing no opposition, the motion carries.
And the next motion is the motion introduced by Mayor Brown, and this is the cleanup motion, if I should be so bold as to suggest. So it is making amendments to the budget to ensure that there is to achieve a zero tax levy impact for 2021, and making the appropriate amendments to the 2021 reserve contributions to achieve the path to zero as suggested by staff and being considered by the Budget Committee.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
So, Mr. Mayor, that ends all of the motions to achieve the 2021 to 2023 budget approvals.
Okay. Do you need a motion for adjournment, or what's next?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, before we adjourn, I think we have public question period, and I'm just going to check, and I believe Councilor Fortini wished to speak at the end, or was that over at Budget Committee?
No, he spoke already at the time.
Okay, if you can just bear with me for a moment, I'm just going to confirm if we have any public questions. When I checked earlier, we did not. And we do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so do we need a motion for adjournment?
Yes, please.
Okay, motion to adjourn moved by Councillor Willens, seconded by Councillor Basante. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Patience and consideration, and to all the staff who worked so hard on this. And there's no meeting tonight at 7 p.m., but we will have this final ratification at the special council meeting to ratify the budget. And Peter, that is in the evening on December 9th, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mark Medeiros. Thank you, David Barrett. Thank you, Peter Fay. Thank you, everyone helping us through this process. To Charlotte in the background, thank you for all your dedication to the city of Brampton, and look forward to seeing everyone virtually tomorrow at Committee of Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of